Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of the Jamf After Dark podcast, a podcast to introduce you to the people at Jamf, learn about what we're up to when it comes to managing and securing Apple devices, along with what is happening in the IT landscape. I'm your co-host, Kat Garbus, joined by co-host Sean Rabbit.
Hi, everybody. Now, you wanted to stop listening to this podcast right now. You want to switch over to the Severance podcast if you haven't listened to that. And heck, if you haven't seen Severance this year, just remember, this isn't 2025. This is Severance Season 2. That's how this works. So that's what everyone at Apple's talking about, I swear.
I'm really glad you brought up Severance. I was going to bring it up later in the podcast if you didn't, but I'm glad you brought it up because I love signing off from work and going and watching a show all about work.
I'll try to be the best me that I can possibly be. Thanks, Rickon. So, yes. But, yeah, well, I mean, if we lose 7 listeners and they suddenly go over and listen to the other podcasts, that's fine. But they got to come back because today we have a special guest here for the first episode of 2025. Yes, the talking moose himself, holder of the sacred rubber chicken. We have William Bill Smith here today for us. Welcome.
Hi there, thank you. You know what I just realized?
What's that?
I go by Talking Moose, and I'm talking to Cat and Mr. Rabbit.
Yeah, we got a moose. We just need a squirrel. We'll be all set. We got a rabbit. We got a cat. It's an After Dark podcast, so my goodness. I don't think Charles knew what an After Dark podcast was. Sorry.
He'd be proud.
He'd be
Charles would be proud.
He would be.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me.
Bill, we know you, but some of the listeners may know you, but some of them may not. Can you give everyone a quick rundown of who you are, what you do here at Jamf, and anything fun you'd like to share?
Explain yourself.
My manager would like me to do that. He would love to know what I do every day. So the way I like to put it is I like to take things that are complicated and make them easier for people to understand. Whether I'm presenting or if I'm writing something like a blog post or trying to take some new technology. We have an internal group called the SMEs, the subject matter experts. And one of the things I really like about that is I get to learn about new features before everybody else, and then I get to kind of explain them. There's a little bit of, I guess you could say it's kind of I'm going to say a talent to be able to speak tech and then also speak layman a little bit. People who aren't necessarily technical. That's what I do.
You and I'm going to share a quote that I follow because I sit on the enablement side of the house at Jamf, and I have to teach partners how to sell our products, offer it simply. And there's an Albert Einstein quote that I swear by. And then the quote is, if you cannot say it simply, you do not know it well enough.
Yes.
So when you were speaking and you're like, I have to put it simply in layman terms, I'm like, that Albert Einstein quote. Yes, that is Bill.
Professional geek to English translator. That's, yeah. Now, we could also call upon Mr. Arthur C. Clarke to decide that, any significantly advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. So it's also possible that you're a professional magician.
Well, I won't give away any secrets on that.
Oh, that's true. Okay. Yeah, you got to be a professional magician debunker then. I guess. Never mind. I don't know where I'm going with this one. 2025.
And in 2025 of Jamf season, what are we on? Season 22, I think, here?
1143, I think, is what we're at now. Is that what's the latest version of Jamf Pro at this point?
But Bill, I wanted to have you on here because you gave a wonderful presentation to us internally. And I was like, you know what? I would love for listeners to hear this. And you were talking about Jamf ID, all the changes that are coming along with it. Before we talk about some of the changes, walking us through some of it, talk us through what is Jamf ID in its simplest form and what it does and how it can help our customers and partners that are leveraging it.
Oh, wow. So I'll tell you now, for anybody who's a Jamf Cloud customer, And I'm going to have a little bit more to say about that in a bit. Let's just say Jamf Cloud customer. Jamf ID is going to become very, very important uh, within the next few releases of Jamf Pro, and for the most part, later this year, with all the new releases that we do this year. Basically, everybody who can access their Jamf Connect downloads or their Jamf Pro activation code or signs up for training, they have to go to a website called a Jamf Account, and it's account.jamf.com. When you sign into that, you're signing in with your Jamf ID. And to make it pretty simple, a Jamf ID is a username and a password that Jamf holds. Now, it is possible, I'm not sure if you're ready for me to talk about it yet, but it is possible to actually integrate your Jamf account with an identity provider, and then you're no longer using your Jamf ID, you're using your identity provider ID. So, Jamf ID is the username and password that you sign into Jamf account if you're not using an identity provider.
And I'm really glad you're tapping on it. You know, you're taking us along this journey, which is great because there's some big changes, I think, and I think a lot of them will be appreciated by customers and those alike. I don't know where you want to start, Bill, but yeah, I just definitely wanted you to come on here and sing the song of all the exciting updates for everybody to get excited about.
All right. Well, let's start with the why. That's what I always like to do. All right. This is one of my magician's secrets. It doesn't help to really start with how something works. You need to understand why we need to do something in the first place. And one of the things that I like to make sure everybody knows, again, Jamf Cloud customers. So if you're on prem, you have your own Jamf Pro server. I'm not talking to you, but maybe I am. Maybe you will want to become a Jamf Cloud customer in the future. We'll find that out. We are getting ready to do some things in Jamf Pro that require access to other services that will be running in Jamf Cloud. And we run them in Jamf Cloud because that's more efficient. It's easier to do things. We have one place to update. We don't necessarily, there I am holding up my finger like everybody can see. We have one place to update as opposed to trying to create a brand new Jamf Pro installer every single time that updates a feature. So it's going to be important that in order to be able to access these services in Jamf Cloud, you sign into your Jamf Pro server in Jamf Cloud using your Jamf ID or whatever you use to sign into your Jamf account. Does that make sense so far?
So far, so good. Now, what my big question, and probably what's on everyone's mind right now, is what is this super secret service that you have to sign in with Jamf account on there, Bill? Is it some no feature that might have been announced last year at JNUC, perhaps?
Oh, it could be a few features. But let's start off with the very first one because I think this is what we've actually talked about publicly, and that's going to be compliance benchmarks. Now, I hope many of you out there have been using the betas, looking at the Jamf Pro betas. If you haven't, I encourage you go into your Jamf account, look for that feedback link on the left-hand side, in the left sidebar, and enroll in the Jamf Pro beta. One of the cool things about that is you can actually say, "Hey, spin me up a Jamf Cloud instance." You don't have to host the beta yourself, and you can see what this is all about. And when you're doing a Jamf Pro beta, you kind of get the idea of what's getting ready to come. And even though you may not necessarily feel like, oh, I don't have time to test or to try out all my different workflows, you can get an idea for what we're getting ready to do. And compliance benchmarks is showing up right now in the Jamf Pro betas. And that's going to be one of those new services that we announced at JNUC last year that's going to require you sign in with the same username and password that you sign into Jamf account. It's called single sign-on. And to make that as simple as possible, you're going to sign into Jamf Pro using your Jamf account ID.
Bill, so besides these baselines that we're going to have access to, any other new features that were announced at JNUC that might be dependent very soon on having a Jamf ID?
I can remember this because it's like ABC. So, one of the features that we announced, artificial intelligence built into Jamf Pro, being able to ask Jamf Pro or our artificial intelligence service, how do I make a policy to deploy this package when I need to also remove this other software? Something like that. So, artificial intelligence, that's the A. Uh, B, blueprints. And I don't know much about blueprints yet. I haven't looked at it. That will be one of the things I hope to become an expert on before long. But I don't believe that's in beta yet. Neither is the artificial intelligence. But the C, compliance benchmarks, uh, that's it. ABC. That's the way I remember it right now. And more than likely, there are other things that will be coming as well in the future.
It really does sound like if people want to get some of these new features, they should probably be having a conversation with their success managers there about getting onto the cloud yesterday if they can.
Yeah, absolutely. This will be available for Jamf Cloud Standard as well as Premium. My understanding is we're looking into what it's going to take to make it available for Jamf Cloud Premium Plus. Because these services are in the cloud, that's why it's not going to be available for anybody who's on prem. So, anybody who is on prem today might realize that, hey, that declarative device management stuff that we've been hearing about, we're not eligible for that. That's another one of those services that's in the cloud only. So, D, declarative device management, anything that has to do with that.
Going to go through the entire alphabet by the time we're done with this podcast here, Bill.
I'm working on it.
I like it. Um, for the day to day folks, right this very second, if you've set up Jamf accounts, I would like to point out the millennial and greater fantastic feature that I don't know if anyone's talked about yet, and that is the button that says Add Team Member or Add Contact inside of Team Members, which means if you need to give someone else access to Jamf Pro's, let's say, activation code, you don't have to pick up the phone anymore and call somebody at customer success. You can actually just do it right in accounts.jamf.com now. So for those who are, my age or younger, who just don't like picking up phones anymore, congratulations, we got you covered.
Yeah, years ago, I moved off to ATMs because I didn't like going into the bank and talking with anybody to get my money. I didn't want anybody to see how broke I was. So I kind of look at it like this: it's a self-help machine. That's what Jamf Account is.
One thing too, since I'm talking specifically about being inside of account.jamf.com too, if you have access for your organization right now, and you go to organization and you go to, if you go to organization and you don't see a button that says SSO for single sign on, it is possible that you might have to still make that phone call. Just as a heads up, this happened to me on my test account. You might need to be added in as the primary contact who can actually add single sign on configurations to your account. And that's simple. All you have to do is just engage support at Jamf so you can get access to that. That's also where we're going to be able to get access to something else Bill talked about, which was tying into a third party identity provider. Can you tell us a little bit more about that, Bill?
Yeah, definitely. So many of you may have already done this. You may have, just like you may have done in Jamf Pro, you might have connected a service like Microsoft Entra or Okta or Google, for example, to your Jamf account so that you can use those as your identity provider. And that way, you have control over who's accessing Jamf account through that instead of having to worry about managing it all within Jamf account. We support that, or again, we support something local, which is Jamf ID.
And I'm going to call back Severance again here. Just in case your any services are no longer required, it'll be very easy for somebody to press the button in their organizational third party identity provider and mark that user as being inactive, which will then disable your access to anything that's in Jamf Pro. So we don't want your any services to not be available. So, stay employed.
That's the power of having a single directory to manage everything, one directory to bind them all.
Kat, I'm so desperately trying not to have spoilers for Severance here. I'm just so desperately, there might be people who haven't heard it yet, or seen it yet. That is.
I'm pretty sure that if you're following Jamf and you're in the Apple world of things, the population of people who have not seen or heard of Severance are incredibly, incredibly small. We're going to pretend Bill didn't just raise his hand. Bill, I wanted to ask of what you could share. Um, I know some of it is still in the works. Some of it isn't public knowledge yet. Some of what we are talking about is.
Spill the
I would
secrets.
I can't. I like Bill. I don't want anything happening,
Me
like in
too.
the last episode of Severance. Anyways, so Bill, what are some of your favorite features that people can expect? Like you personally, like this is one part of that new update. What do you like about it, and why?
Now, you're talking about the single sign-on or the new features like the ABCD?
Yes.
Any of it, any of it. Like what stands out to you, where it's like this is going to be really helpful. I really love this.
Oh boy. I'm looking forward to blueprints. And again, I have not looked at that yet. I don't know what's coming in blueprints, but knowing what we have already, I believe in Jamf now, or what blueprints would mean maybe if you were looking at Apple Configurator, I love that idea. To me, that's something that we should have had a long time ago. But we've been working hard and diligently just to get to this place where we're at right now.
Yeah.
Blueprints is that culmination of a lot of hard work. I'm so happy to see it coming. I think it's going to be a game changer in some ways because new people to Jamf are going to understand that better, I think, than policies and anything else that might be configuration profiles, how all of that kind of merges together. Today, we have to do a lot of Lego block building first, and then we have to put the Legos together. I'm hoping that blueprints are going to make doing that easier.
I'm on the shortcut truck. So, like, if I can take a shortcut to achieving something and make it look like I worked harder than I did, I'm all for that. And I really think Blueprints is really going to help make a lot of people's jobs a bit easier and alleviate time in areas that maybe they were spending a bit too much on or needed to your point, like policies are great, but if there's a way that that can get simplified a bit to achieve more with less time, I do agree with you there. I think that is something that'll be really helpful. What about you,
Oh,
Sean?
if you want the more with less time, let me tell you the sole reason why blueprints are going to be the greatest thing on the face of the planet. And yay, declarative device management, number one. But number two, when you need to update your Wi Fi password when you're rotating it, you're going to be able to update the actual config profile in the blueprint, and it's not going to knock all the devices offline. It's
Ooh,
glorious. It's going to actually work. So you don't, because remember, like old school config profiles, right? Apple push notification system is not really that intelligent. It just knows two things: either delete a profile from a device or add a profile to the device. So I need to update the profile for Wi Fi, right? So what do? I send out a series of commands. Delete the profile that contains the Wi Fi password. Where did the computer go?
I think
So,
Apple actually fixed that for iOS a little while back, but that's not one of those things I've ever wanted to test and verify because I'm not
especially
sure.
in bulk for an entire school or something like that. Yeah. So this
Right.
this is going to
Yeah.
be nice. It's going to be really nice, just for that alone.
I do all of my testing in customer production.
Absolutely. I think that all of us here who are listeners, all seven listeners, would definitely say that they're right there with you. They're okay with testing and prod. It's what I do too. Oh my goodness. So, what are some of the different compliance standards that we're going to be supporting right off the bat? Do you know off the top of your head, Bill? Got CIS level one. I know for sure is inside there. So
And I would imagine we want to get something with NIST as well. CIS is going to be right off the bat. That's my understanding. But there's a whole bunch of different compliance benchmarks, sets that are already created that are considered standards that I think we want to incorporate that. And we're going to probably do that sooner, much sooner, rather than later, from what I understand.
Yeah, and remember, this isn't a complete one-for-one replacement for Jamf Compliance Editor. If you're already using Jamf Compliance Editor, it's going to be kind of like a companion to, if you would, or if I wasn't using Compliance Editor before, this is an option here for you as well. So, um, if you don't know what I'm talking about with Jamf Compliance Editor, go back and listen to previous podcasts, and or just search for Jamf Compliance Editor, because that's a solution you could use in prod today, even if you had an on-prem server, to be able to enforce some compliance guidelines and baselines.
And I believe that was a free download too. I don't even think there was an additional cost to it. So if you are not using it and you're like, that sounds helpful to me, if there's an audit, something like that, or I don't know, you're trying to save a few bucks on your security insurance, that would be a helpful little bit of info to have handy, I
And
think.
Cat, block your ears. You don't actually have to be using Jamf Pro to use Compliance Editor. Shh, don't tell anybody. But it does make it a lot better for reporting, because it actually does spit that report out as well, saying, "Hey, here's all of the inventory reports to say yes, our baseline's actually been deployed."
I do believe also that compliance benchmarks in Jamf Pro are going to be doing very much similar to what the compliance editor is doing, and that's referring to a GitHub site. I believe it's run by NIST, and so anything that changes on that site, that central repository of benchmarks, as soon as that changes, Jamf Pro is updated because we're not having to actually build that into the product. It's going to be live. So if you're using Compliance Editor, you're going to get a lot of the same functionality as far as the data is concerned directly from Jamf Pro 2.
I want to switch paths a little bit back to the wonderful world of Jamf Account. There are lots of people out in the world right now that have their Jamf Pro server set up to talk right now to their Okta account, their Entra account, their Ping Federate, their Shibboleth, whatever the heck it is out there. Sorry, I just swore for those of you who know me. What will those people expect when they have to add in Jamf account to their Jamf Pro server?
Oh, I love this. I love this. Uh, it's going to take longer to talk about this than to actually set it up. That's the way I look at it. If you so let's start back with Jamf account. That's where things are going to begin. And let's say that you do not have an identity provider connected to it. There will be absolutely nothing for you to do there. It's ready to go. Now, let's say that you're over in Jamf Pro land in your Jamf Cloud server. What do you need to do to set that up? And there's two things. First, if you have not configured single sign-on, you're going to want to go into your Jamf Pro settings and look for single sign-on. It's right there at the top, and you're going to want to turn it on. And as soon as you turn it on, there's going to be a couple of little radio buttons just below that. One will say Jamf Account, and in parentheses, it'll say OIDC. And then right below that, the second button is going to say SAML. So first, you want to make sure OIDC is selected, Jamf Account. That's what makes this whole thing between Jamf Account and Jamf Pro work. And all you have to do is really save.
OIDC, new hotness.
It
SAML,
is new.
busted. That's if we're going to go with the Men in Black thing. So there we go.
Yeah, look at the little flashy thing here. So that's if you don't have an identity provider configured anywhere. That's all you have to do. Nothing in Jamf Account. Turn it on in Jamf Pro, select Jamf Account, call it done. You should now be able to sign into your Jamf Pro instance in Jamf Cloud with your Jamf Account ID. Simple enough. All right. Now, what if you're like what Sean's talking about? We have not done anything in Jamf account. We have not configured it for single sign-on, but maybe we have over in Jamf Pro. What do we do? Well, what you would have done prior to Jamf Pro 11.13 is you would have used a protocol called SAML. That's that second option in single sign-on. SAML is what Jamf Pro has been using for, oh goodness, almost 10 years now. And can you still use it? Yeah. And here's one of the cool things about it. If you decide as an administrator, oh, I want the new hotness, I'm going to go configure my Jamf account so I can log in to Jamf Pro with my Jamf account, my Jamf ID. but I don't want my end users being able to get to Jamf Account. Like the ones, like students, for example, if they have to open up self-service and they have to sign in with maybe Intra or Google or Okta credentials, you can still keep that. You can turn on OIDC and single sign-on settings for Jamf Pro, and then you can check a box right below that that says, oh, and keep my SAML settings too. That way, SAML is only for your end users so that you can use that with, again, enrollment or with self-service, but your administrators can still get what they need of those new features that are coming in Jamf Pro.
Now, I know I called it old busted. It's not right. SAML's still good. It's okay. But the best way that I thought about that, since we were talking about, can you talk about it really simply, is SAML is kind of like a ticket to get into Disney World versus OIDC for administrators is that park hopper pass that might get you into a whole bunch of different things, and you might need it for multiple days.
Yeah, I call that the wristband.
Nice.
Same thing with Kerberos.
I thought we were going to stop swearing, Bill. Stop it.
Oh, I love Kerberos. I don't care what people have said.
You're the
I,
only person I know that loves it. I literally shuddered, like physically shuddered when you said Kerberos. I'm like,
all right,
no.
we'll come back. We'll talk about that. But OIDC, Sean said, hey, that's the new hotness. It's absolutely right, because Jamf Pro did not have OIDC. It only had SAML. So why did we choose OIDC for Jamf Account? If OIDC and SAML both kind of do the same thing for single sign-on, why didn't we just choose SAML? Well, the reason is OIDC can bring other things along with it, like, this account is also a member of a group. And that's something that SAML wasn't able to do for us. So now you might be able to configure your single sign-on settings in Jamf Account. Let's say it's with Microsoft Entra. And in Entra, you have a group called Jamf Pro Administrators. You put your Jamf Pro Administrators in there, and then you put that group in Jamf Pro. And I haven't tested this yet, but it's supposed to work. I've had a developer tell me that it works.
Oh, it works.
That
I've set
it
it up.
should.
Yeah, it
Ah,
really does. It's really cool.
nice. And we could only get that with OIDC.
You know the other thing you can get with OIDC? Something that's people have been yelling at me forever in 6 days. You can go in and set up all your multi-factor authentication requirements based on getting into the admin console for Jamf Pro now. Yes, so we can have a separate set of conditional access policies. So,
What?
yeah.
Wait, say that all one more time, because I didn't realize that.
Oh, yeah.
And I feel like that's news. I feel like that's a hotness that we
Oh,
have not talked about.
it's serious hotness. So, because you're going to be logging in to your Jamf account in order to get into your Jamf Pro server or your Jamf Security Cloud instance, or looking at the Jamf Protect instance, all that fun stuff. You can set separate rules for accessing Jamf account that would maybe like, oh, I'm going to require a FIDO2 token, a pass key, a hardware YubiKey, a push to my phone, a type in a special passcode, a letter from my third grade teacher, whatever it is. You can have that because your identity provider is going to be enforcing that to log into Jamf account. So it's here, it's available for you, and your end users can still get into self-service without having to do crazy hoops in their identity provider setup. It's going to be great.
Yeah, and your security people don't have to know Jamf Pro in order to be able to configure their security policies.
That's really helpful too, because oftentimes, as we know on this call, and I'm sure some of our listeners can relate, they all don't always talk to each other or work alongside each other. They're often very, very siloed, doing different things. So I think that is a huge, huge benefit, in my opinion. That'll be really, really great.
Absolutely.
Bill, if there's something that people should start doing right now, like just while they're listening to the podcast, pull your car over, whip out your laptop.
Driveway moment.
Yep. What should they do? Where should they start?
Okay. Before you do anything, think. And that thinking is two things. Do I have single sign-on configured in Jamf account? Yes or no? Answer that question. And then do I have single sign-on configured in Jamf Pro? Yes or no? And if you think about all the different permutations, I think there's like 4. I could have it off in both. I could have it on in one, but not the other, or vice versa. Or I could have single sign-on configured for both. That's about it. That's all the starting places where you're going to start. Now, again, in Jamf Account, if you have not configured that for an identity provider at all, you're just going to use your Jamf ID. Nothing to do. Leave that alone. However, if you are already integrated with an identity provider, there's one thing you need to do, one thing in Jamf Account, and that is I need you to go into your organization settings and go into SSO. You need to edit your SSO settings and scroll all the way to the bottom, and you need to look for your Jamf Cloud instance name and select it. That's it. You just need to make sure your Jamf account knows what Jamf Pro server it's going to allow to use your sign-on. And that's all you have to do in Jamf account. Over in Jamf Pro, again, you need to turn on single sign-on. You definitely need to select OIDC, Jamf account, and it does say Jamf account, so it's easy to figure out. Scroll all the way to the bottom of your single sign-on settings and look at those checkboxes there. And do you see self-service selected, or do you see enrollment selected for single sign-on? If you don't, save. There's nothing more to do. But if you do see those, that means your end users need to use single sign-on. So you want to go back up and you want to check that box that says, hey, under OIDC, I also want to use SAML, and then save. That's that part of the setup. And then the very last thing that any administrator needs to do is to make sure that they have an account in Jamf Pro that matches the email address. Technically, it's a user principal name, but email address that they're using to sign into Jamf account. And if that's done, don't close that window. Leave that window open, save, open up a new private browser window. That's the best way to test, because if you screw up your SSO settings, you're going to have a hard time getting back in, unless you know about the failover URL. But in a brand new private browser window, or even a completely different browser, test. Go back to your Jamf Pro instance, and all of a sudden you're going to see the password field is gone. Just email. Ooh. All right, deep breath. Fill in the same email address that you would use to sign on to Jamf account, log in, and if everything is connected just right, you're going to go right to your desktop, or to your dashboard, I should say. And that's it. Like I said, it takes longer to actually talk about it than it does to actually configure it.
Bill, you're like a walking Jamf recipe. Like, I feel
Oh,
like I heard like a recipe, but in Jamf step by step versus add the flour, then whisk eggs in. Like, you did that,
gently,
but for
gently.
yeah, but for this, where can we find instructions? You said that beautifully. You articulated everything so well. Um, I'm a pretty auditory learner, so I would probably just hit play, pause, and just keep doing this, listening to you. But for those who might want to read the recipe, where can they go to set this up?
We should have most everything now in our Jamf Pro documentation. And I've helped write some of that so that it's hopefully following the same kind of thinking that I just gave out here. And then, as part of that, there is a Jamf technical article, and I wish I had the URL. We'll put it in post, right? It is blah 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 blah. You'll fill that in, right? But all you have to do is look for the one that says FAQ. There, we have a Jamf Pro single sign-on FAQ that answers that and more questions than I've even addressed. So you want to look for that FAQ.
And that website to find that is learn.jamf.com. That's right, learn.jamf.com. All the instructions for everything are all up on learn.jamf.com.
Bill, I wanted to ask one final question. Is there anything that we didn't cover today that you want to be sure listeners are aware of before we let you go and ride back into the sunset of keeping things simple and documenting things for our customers?
So I think we've talked about everything. Again, the why is we need to do this in order for you to be able to get access to those new Jamf Pro features you're going to probably really want in the future. ABC, artificial intelligence, blueprints, compliance editor, D, DDM, or actually declarative device management. I've got to stop abbreviating DDM. Apple does not say DDM. We just seem to have a habit of doing that here in Jamf. Declarative device management.
MAID stands for Managed Apple
Oh, yeah, and Apple
Account.
uses MAID all the time, right? But I would say,
It's kind of like how the S in Intune stands for speed.
oh, yeah, it's both silent and invisible. But I would say just make sure that when you're configuring single sign-on for the first time, either in Jamf Account and or Jamf Pro, don't close the current browser window, open up a new one to test, you'll be fine. Otherwise, uh, call Jamf support or contact Jamf support, I should say, and they will tell you, they will guide you how to get to the failover URL so that you can get back in. You're not going to be completely lost if something breaks and your password doesn't work.
And if something does break, just call Sean. Just call
Oh
Sean.
yeah,
Forget support. Just call Sean.
My cell
yeah,
phone number is 555.
499. Yeah.
Bill, we want to thank you for hopping on today.
Oh, I appreciate it. Had fun.
Yeah. I think the only thing Sean and I left for us to close out would be a tech tip and then maybe
Well, we,
just a
we
quick.
do have to have a moment of silence, though, or as I would like to now say, we need to charge our glasses for the 7 listener salute uh, to in remembrance of the home button.
It's done, huh?
Yes,
We
as
fill our glasses with whiskey.
yeah, have a little whiskey, have a little bit. If you're a friend of Bill the other way, had any other drink, that's fine. That's fine. But charge your glasses. Just a moment with the release of the new iPhone 16e with the extremely sexy Apple designed cellular modem inside of it, which is going to bring battery life even better, I've been told. Unfortunately, that means the very last device sold by Apple with the home button is now gone.
I shall have a sip of remembrance in my Super Saiyan Vegeta mug.
I love it. It's so crazy. But yeah, so everyone's going to have to go out and buy a new iPhone. Sorry, I know you have an iPhone Ultra Pro 16 Max, but now, yeah, the new iPhone 16e, cheaper than ever, and it's nazier than ever. So that's out too. So that's a good sign.
I'm gonna wait for the 17 in the fall. I'm all for it.
I was going to say, if Steve Jobs were with us today, he'd probably have another coffin on stage for the button like he did with Mac OS 9,
Is that what that? I don't remember that for some reason.
2002.
2002.
Well, anybody who's a Star Trek enthusiast is waiting for the M5 to come out, so that's another story completely. Anyway, Bill, thank you so much for joining. We appreciate you coming on.
Thanks much.
Got one tech tip here for you, though, Kat.
Let's hear it. We need one.
Yeah. So you should go to account.jamf.com.
Why,
And
Sean?
the
Why?
reason why you want to do that is because you can get access to something called Experience Jamf.
What
Let's
does it do, Sean?
What does it do? It gives you access to all the toys, which is the best thing. In fact, you can take a non production test machine, which, as everyone knows, is also the drinking game anytime I say that on a podcast or a webinar or anything like that. Take your non production test machine and you can enroll it into a Jamf Pro server that's live and working and pre set up for you so you can play with any of the toys.
What are some of the favorite toys to play with in Jamf Experience, Sean?
I personally like being able to deploy malware onto my non-production test machine and watch Jamf Protect stop it in real time. It's really nice and cool to see. And then, of course, you do have access via a Jamf account to get in and look at a read-only instance of all of those servers on the back end, too.
Everything Sean said is true. Yeah, honestly, I took a peek behind the curtain and it's pretty slick. So for those of you who are like, does this really work? Is this really something we can try? Or I would love to see it and believe it. I think it's such a really great offering.
All you got to do, account.jamf.com, and you can get access to it today.
Just do it. It costs you nothing. Just sign up, go for it, have fun. Who knows? Maybe if that's what you need to convince someone to adopt other things or whatever it may be. But yeah, I think Sean and I, we might have just the same. I don't know if it's an issue, but we both liked the malware one. I don't know what that says about us because there are several features, but we're like, ooh, the one that might break things. Let's play with that one. We're the ones that like want to play with fire.
Well, I'm getting my production machine out right now.
Do it.
That's the right answer. Well, before I encourage Bill to do that and potentially get fired, congratulations, Kat. We've got another professional podcast in the bag.
Really glad to have kicked off the year with everyone. We're excited for more podcasts later on and another one in the books.
Jamf After Dark is a podcast from Jamf and is copyright. Ooh, I got to update that. Nice. 2025, all rights reserved. Technical details and product offerings may change at any time, so always check jamf.com for the latest information on our products and services.
You can reach out to us if you have any questions or comments or even suggested show topics. And of course, we love fan mail. Simply send a friendly email to info@jamf.com with the subject line "Attention to the podcast." We're also a sponsor of the Mac Admins Foundation, and several Jamfs are available on the Mac Admins Slack channel. And of course, if you need support, visit support.jamf.com to open a ticket to get your technical questions answered.
Special thanks to our guest this week, Bill Smith, the Talking Moose himself. Thanks to our audio engineers, good old Eminem, Merlin, and Martin, who help us sound great. And until next time, for Kat Garbus, I'm Sean Rabbit.
And for Sean Rabbit, I'm Kat Garbus, and we'll catch you after dark. Again, good night. Go watch Severance, and we'll be with you all soon.
The walls in the mall are like totally, totally tall. And you know what's also in a mall? An Apple store where you can go buy your mom an iPhone.